Hi, I'm Marie.
And I'm Russell.
And we're still standing with Ukraine. And so today?
Today, we're going to do something a little different. We don't have a guest today. We're going to talk about some big picture things that aren't only affecting Ukraine, but much of the rest of the world too. And we don't have a teleprompter, so I'll be reading this, but excuse us. But not to date myself, but preparing for today's video, I thought of a line from 1969 Crosby, Stills and Nash song. It says, "You got to speak out against madness." Now that we find ourselves in the midst of World War III, I think that would be a good rally cry for our times. So to put things in perspective, think back to World War II. There are a lot of scary similarities between World War II and today. World War II was preceded by social unrest throughout Europe. There was civil war in Spain in the 1930s, the late 1930s. Extreme nationalism and fascism were on the rise in Germany and Italy throughout the 1930s. A worldwide economic depression raged from 1929 right through 1939. Today, we've got social unrest in much of Europe and the US. There are protests and riots centered around migration policies, agricultural trade, fascism making inroads against democracy in Europe and in the US.
And then World War II, it featured two autocratic dictators trying to expand their spheres of influence. There was Hitler in Germany and Mussolini in Italy. Today, the dictators are Putin in Russia and Trump in the United States. Following World War II, the world was dominated by tension between the world's two biggest powers to emerge from the war, the Soviet Union and the United States. We called it the Cold War. Fragile peace prevailed, but huge differences in ideologies were always boiling right under the surface. The Soviet Union, the United States, and eventually China too, lived under the doctrine of fear of mutual destruction. Each of these three owned a nuclear arsenal capable of wiping out all advanced life on Earth. None of the three dared to attack either of the others because they knew they themselves would be destroyed in the process too.
In the early 1990s, though, things suddenly looked much better. As the Soviet Union collapsed, our main adversary had disappeared. Most countries leaving the USSR became peaceful democracies or republics. Russia even became more democratic under Boris Yeltsin. American businesses opened up in Russia, and tourists traveled back and forth between both countries. Russia even had a stock market which American investors could invest in. Things seemed pretty good for 20 years or so. But early on in that 20-year time period, things were happening in Russia that we didn't see or didn't understand the importance of at the time. Vladimir Putin, a relative unknown outside of Russia, became president in 2000 and slowly began stifling Russian democracy. He took over more and more power for himself, terrorizing political opponents with his KGB secret police, and gradually taking away more and more freedoms from the people. A democratically elected president, intent on staying in power indefinitely, gradually seizing more and more power for himself while intimidating and persecuting anybody that tried to get in his way. Sound familiar?
Well, Putin grew up in the modern Russian Empire officially known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR for short. He's always thought the collapse of the USSR in the 1990s was a terrible tragedy. His grand ambition has long been to rebuild the great Russian Empire and pull the USSR back together. Well, you could say 20, but in 2008, he began by attacking the neighboring country of Georgia. Publicly, he used the excuse of helping Georgian separatists there and Russia still controls that area today. In 2014, Russia invaded the eastern Ukrainian regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, which together are referred to as the Donbass. He did that under the pretext of helping Ukrainian separatists there. From 2014 right up to the present, Ukraine's military has been fighting Russian forces that have continuously tried to expand the area of the Donbass they controlled. In 2014, Russia also invaded Ukraine's southern Crimean Peninsula and took it over without much resistance. The rest of the world just watched in shock and did nothing to help.
Well, in 2022, Putin decided to go big. On February 24th of that year, he launched a massive invasion of Ukraine simultaneously from Russia, Belarus, Crimea, and the Black Sea. In a few days, Russia managed to take over 20% of the country. He even got his ground troops to the outskirts of Kiev. These were the days when Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, famously said, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition." I love that. The U.S. had offered to evacuate him from the country, give him a ride. He said no thanks.
Well, Russia's advance stalled, and Ukrainians fought back much better than the West had thought they could do. Other countries came to the aid of Ukraine, and in short time, more than 40 countries were supplying military or humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Now in 2026, no less than 25 countries are still supplying Ukraine with military equipment, while dozens of others provide only humanitarian or financial help. For the past 2 or 3 years now, Putin has been openly saying that he intends to capture all of Ukraine and then move to reclaim other European countries that once were part of the USSR. Poland, Finland, and the Baltic states of Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia all take him at his word about that and have spent a ton of money and effort to fortify their borders with Russia. As for Ukraine, they're literally fighting for their lives. Putin says Ukraine isn't even an independent country, just part of Russia. And he intends to rid it of people who refuse to call themselves Russians. He's openly waging a genocide to do away with Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian people. The International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued an arrest warrant for him and labeled him a war criminal.
Since 2022, Russia has spent hundreds of billions of dollars and lost about 1.3 million men dead or incapacitated in Ukraine. They've been helped by Belarus, mainly providing staging areas and missile launch sites. Iran has supplied them thousands of aerial attack drones called Shaheeds. China has provided drone components, satellite imagery, and economic support by buying massive amounts of Russian oil. And North Korea has sent ground troops and artillery guns and shells. And here we have a picture of the three amigos, Putin, Xi of China, and Kim from North Korea.
So Russia's war on Ukraine has become the biggest war in Europe since World War II, ended 80 years ago, and on a scale comparable to the Korean War of the early 1950s and the Vietnam War of the 60s. So as 2026 began, the world was trying to avoid being pulled into another world war, with 4 countries engaged on one side and dozens on the other side, in various ways and to various degrees over a period of 4 years.
Okay, well now we'll turn our attention away from Ukraine for a minute. Enter Donald Trump. the attention-seeking sociopath with his delusions of grandeur, Donald Trump, not the people of the United States, not the United States Congress, independently launched a war against the country of Iran on February 28th of this year. There's something about February with these guys. His rationale for doing this changes day to day. Excuses have included wanting to help the Iranian people rid themselves of a vicious leader, to destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities, to deposing Iran's supreme leader. Helping him in this endeavor in Iran from the start was the country of Israel. Probably, though, when we look back at events with more time for calm and rational reflection, it'll be seen that Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel wanted to attack Iran and help talk Donald Trump into helping him. Over the first few weeks of this war, the United States was spending over $1 billion a day, bombing hundreds of Iranian targets every day. Israel was doing likewise.
And there's the bombing on that picture.
No, we don't have it there yet. Go ahead.
So, as every military strategist has warned they've warned about this for over decades, as soon as Iran realized they were in serious trouble, they lash out the only way they could. Firstly, they began launching attack drones at every American military site in the Middle East. It now seems obvious that Iran has been being given satellite images and precise targeting data from Russia. They also indiscriminately launched missiles and drones at infrastructure targets in several neighboring countries. At least 12 countries have been attacked by Iranian missile drones, and as everybody except Trump also knew they would do, they made the Strait of Hormuz near the entrance to the Persian Gulf impassable for world shipping by attacking ships passing through the strait. In a matter of hours, the Strait of Hormuz was shut off to shipping, and Donald Trump's war on Iran was having immediate and serious consequences for most of the world. Among other types of cargo, 20% of the world's oil supplies moves through the Strait of Hormuz. The world's economies are fueled by crude oil and all of the vital products derived from oil and natural gas. Things like gasoline, lubricants, heating oil, rubber, fertilizers, pesticides, and literally dozens of other products.
By launching these attacks on Iran, Donald Trump is helping Russia in its war against Ukraine in two huge ways. First, any air defense missiles or systems that the U.S. should be sending to Ukraine are now going to the Middle East. And secondly, to try and keep oil prices from going through the roof, Donald Trump took sanctions off of Russians, letting them sell oil on the open world market for around $100 a barrel now. Then he took sanctions off of Iran and let them sell more oil too. So what we have now is the U.S. is bolstering the war. The U.S. is bolstering the war budgets of two countries who are attacking Ukraine and attacking American bases in the Middle East. Over a dozen American soldiers have been killed on those bases in the Middle East already.
So here we are with what might seem as two unrelated major wars raging in Europe and in the Middle East. Russia, the biggest country in the world, is attacking the biggest country in Europe, Ukraine. The United States is attacking Iran, a country of 90 million people, which is being supported by Russia. Iran is launching missiles into a dozen Middle East countries, shown in the purple in this map. And Israel is attacking and being attacked by most of its neighbors. Altogether, 35 to 40 countries are involved as combatants or major suppliers of war materials. Several dozen more countries on every continent are feeling the effects of shortages and inflation. Sure sounds like World War III to me.
And it's actually worse than that, even. Aside from the actual shooting going on right now, involving dozens of countries, several other countries are on the edge with growing civil unrest. Right here in America, we've had nationwide protests. We're filming this on March 30th. We just had the latest No Kings rally, where something like 8 million people participated in the country over the weekend. And we're protesting throughout the whole country against an authoritarian regime, openly doing everything possible to rig our upcoming November elections and illegally remain in power. Our judicial system in the U.S. is working overtime to knock down one illegal democracy-wrecking move after another by a president who's doing everything he can to destroy our rule of law and destroy our democracy.
Meanwhile, in Europe, massive protests happen on a regular basis in Hungary, Georgia, Czechia, and Moldova. People there are rightfully enraged by Russia's interference in their recent or upcoming elections. Russia's very busy these days, aren't they? And not in a good way. In Hungary, Russian puppet Viktor Orban is trying to extend 15 years, his 15-year reign of power with Putin's help. Czechia has seen massive protests against its new government's leanings away from democracy. Even in Great Britain and Germany, tens of thousands are rising up for different reasons, going against leaders they think are too lenient in their immigration policies. Donald Trump's recent strategic vision for the United States report doesn't make things better. It calls for the U.S. to cut off aid to struggling democracies around the world, to abandon our European allies, and to ally with Vladimir Putin's Russia. Nobody would have believed this possible 5 years ago.
Now, in the best of times, global international relations are complicated, to say the least. There are trade relations, border disputes, ambitious leaders trying to make a name for themselves, clashing religious cultures, growing economies trying to secure more resources, you name it. Sometimes all these things reach a boiling point and you find yourself in the worst of times. Well, that's where we are now. And I think we can rightfully call it World War III. A few years ago, I heard an expression for the first time. It probably wasn't just invented, but I didn't think about things like this much and had never heard it before. History isn't a spectator sport. I guess it could be, but the spectators would be the ones being steamrolled with no right to complain about anything. Another good line is the one we mentioned at the beginning of this episode from American rock and roller David Crosby. You've got to speak out against the madness. It's hard to say that without trying to sing it, but you've got to speak out against the madness. Well, now is the time to speak out. Contact your elected officials, go to protests, post on social media, write a letter to the editor, donate money to a worthy cause, and vote whenever you get the chance. That's probably the most important thing. Don't be steamrolled. So that's not a very happy story to tell you today, but that's where we are today.
That's who we are, and that's why Russell and I have been so involved, and we're even like those, well, I try not to show the gray hairs, but one of those group set of people that have been sort of maligned because we're the majority, trying to go out there and speak out against this madness, like Russell put at the beginning and the end of this episode. And the strange thing is, why are they saying that it's funny that it's boomers that are out there? Because guess what? Boomers vote. Mm-hmm. So people should be listening to us, right? I think so. And I recently made this, you won't be able to see it here. Maybe I'll add it as one of the pictures so you can see it better at this point in the video. But it's a purple finch. It's the tough little bird of New Hampshire, our state bird, that I drew. And I turned into buttons and stickers, and I have the original also. But I also put on it New Hampshire's motto, live free or die. It's a pretty tough motto because it involves standing up for what you believe in to the point of death. Or if you're not going to be free, now that's a whole other episode in itself, freedom. But we have been standing for Ukraine, and this episode and all the other episodes are about standing with Ukraine because they believe in this themselves, to stand up, to live free or die, to keep your home, your culture, what's yours. If it cannot be yours and you have to turn to some other beliefs, what would you do? So we stand with Ukraine, and we will be doing a lot of craft fairs this year, and we will be letting people know about those on my Facebook page, Marie Paul Gervacio, and also on our Facebook, Sunflower of Ukraine. The Facebook page is Sunflower Ukraine, and so we will update you on those ways to buy a gift, which will turn into a gift because all the proceeds go to our nonprofit that we volunteer for, Dobro New England. This is the Dobro bear that they have as their mascot, and so I want to thank Concord TV for their help in helping us get the word out there. And also, I want to thank you for watching till the end and supporting Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine and glory to the heroes. Slava Ukraini and Heroam Slava.
We'll see you again next time.